Hey everybody. No. Kitty cat waits all day just for me to sit here and he can then sit in my lap instead of just sitting in the chair by himself, I guess. Today I'm going to be talking about heroes, the concept of heroes, what it looks like to choose an ideal. I think that's kind of fitting, especially as one ages, because you're trying to be something. You're aiming towards something. Like what is a dad? What does a bearded karate dad look like? Well, obviously it's like looking in a mirror. That's for sure. But as you think of the next generation, you also think of like what are the children specifically aiming for? What are they trying to be like? And this is the like in Maps and Meaning. I'm going to be referencing that book probably a good bit just because it's fresh in my mind. I'm almost done with it. I think I'm down to like 10 pages, which is pretty extraordinary. And why are heroes important? Why should we even bother aiming at anything? Well, because there's a hierarchy of things that are important. Life is like the underpinning. Like you can't have consciousness, you can't have choice without life. That's like my very rough arguments for pro-life as opposed to pro-choice per se, because you can't have the choice without life. Therefore, one is more important than the other. You can go back and forth about that if you want to. But for a hero, what does a hero look like? So in my pondering up, or in the warehouse, which is where most of the pondering gets done, we get to think about, the types of heroes, contrasting this stuff to, make sure I'm picking the right ones myself, because everyone should have something like that when they are a child or young. I had my martial arts instructor. He was definitely within arm's reach, only 10 years older than me, so he was the ideal I reached for. I wouldn't even call him a hero per se, maybe something I wanted to emulate, something he wanted to copy. Because we all try to copy something. And if you don't have anything specific in mind that you're not awestruck by, that you're not impressed by, that you're not looking to be like, because worship can be looked at as a form of copying, which is where, you're aiming toward that hero, then you better maybe do some self-reflection. Because if you have no goals, no destiny, nothing is beyond, you're just happy and blissful, then you might want to reflect on how affluent you might be if all your needs are met. Because usually, which actually should be like this, if anything, you have to deal with the concept of death that's coming up. So that's like a need that's not really met, nor can it be, just due to the nature of our finitude. In my opinion, that's where Christ comes in. Like you live regardless. But I'm thinking about the concept of like fictional heroes, because there's one of the first fictional heroes that I was impressed by. Well, Raistlin, first off, from the Dragonlance series, and if you haven't read about him, the whole thing takes a while to unpack. He was a mage that was cursed to the point, and he got so much power that he actually fought the gods, and I guess the gods in this world are tangible, the ones that created everything, and he actually, should I spoil it? He actually beats them, all of them, but then there's time travel involved, which gets super confusing, and then you have his twin brother putting in his hand in the Book of Time before the neutral god shuts it to stop the end of time. It's a very, very amazing set of fictional books. So who's the hero in that one? Because at the end, I'm going to spoil the crap out of this for you. What happens is Carmen actually works his way into the abyss, or the dark area, wherever the Dark Queen is, before his brother Raceland's about to fight the Dark Queen, lure her out into the material plane and beat her. Before that happens, he gets to him and he tells him what happens. He's like, you devastated the planet, there's nothing left alive, but you win. And at that point, at the end, and it's a complex story about how Karma got to that point, his brother doesn't care. He's so above and beyond. It's like transcendent nuclear war kind of battle going on at the moment. He does not care, cannot see the tininess all the destruction he's done. He's raw rage with power. But before he becomes that, Caramon catches him right before he's about to have the trial with the Dark Queen. And he says, you win! And so his brother doesn't believe him. He's like, you're here to trick me. And then he does the paralyzation mind-reading combo. And he's like, alright. And then he sends Caramon out, and Tasselhoff, that's like a little Kender that was with him. And he just stays there. He's like, I'm going to let the Dark Queen have me. Because it's better than world destruction. And that's another, if you go back to the pro-life thing, like you can't have choice without, like everything needs to be alive for everything else to be relevant. Right? I think that makes sense. So that's Raceland. Then you have Garrett Jax. Garrett Jax is he's from the Shannara series. Don't ever watch the series done on MTV. It's terrible. It's like beyond terrible. It's so bad. It's like Battlefield Earth bad. If you ever watch Battlefield Earth, it's that bad. It's the book Battlefield Earth is actually quite good, I think. The movie's so bad. It's like don't ever read it. It makes the book literally like self-combust. It's so terrible. So Garrett Jax from the Shannara series, he's a guy that I think Will Omsford, maybe his son, begins with the J. I can never remember his name. Bree is his sister. Jared? It's probably Jared. Why wouldn't it be Jared? So there's like 12 gnomes guarding this boy, and Garrett Jackson just like a dude sitting there by the brook, and he's like, why are 12 grown adults guarding one boy? And then they get in a fight and he beats all of them. And then except for the dwarf. The dwarf is like, no, sorry, they're all dwarves and the one gnome. I forget the race, doesn't matter. But he's like, that's alright, I know who you are, Garrett Jackson. You do whatever you want. And he's known as the weapons master. And this guy, he has reputation, but it's not the reputation, it's the action that follows. You are like John Wick. John Wick's a great example these days. You are actually more than what people say you are while you're alive. And then who knows where the story goes, and there's always an element of myth to them. So Garrett Jack fights a kraken. Like this giant kraken thing gets summoned on against the dwarves. And the dwarves try to fight it, fail terribly. And so Garrett Jax grabs like a giant harpoon, jumps into where the kraken is, stabs it through the eye to its brain, pulls it out and finds the other eye, I think, and stabs it again. I forget that second part. And then at the end, I'll spoil the heck out of this too for you, but it's worth the read if you have a chance to read and you're interested in fantasy fiction. It's the Elfstones of Shannara. There's this monster that Alanon, the only mage left on the planet, kills. But the only way he can kill it, and it rends him. Like he's torn up and down. He has to shove his arm down the creature's throat. It's like a giant baboon thing with claws, and teeth, and it laughs all the time. He has to shove his arm down the thing's mouth, so the teeth, right? And he has to blow it up from the inside. That's how Alan, and he dies in the process. Well, Garrett Jax is not magical, and Garrett Jax has to fight one of those things. The thing is, it gets stronger if it gets hurt or if it hurts you. And he beats that thing, and he dies doing it. But there's a point where the crew has to go, and he's like, I got this. He pulls out his swords. You're like, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. He killed something that's unkillable except by magic with swords. That one dude did that. So that's a hero. What else is a hero? There's a hero. I'm going for like the best sense. Full Metal Alchemist. Naruto. There's obviously hero elements in there, maybe less serious, sort of. Vash the Stampede from Trigun. Those are some I really enjoyed. So you know what else I thought was interesting? Speaking of like anime-ish styles, like I walked into Hot Topic the other day. The rare time when it was when we were doing Christmas shopping. My wife and I were in there, and I went to Hot Topic. And so when I was a teenager, I would go into Hot Topic, and I'd see what was on the walls. It was all music. It was band shirts, right? Whatever was popular in the theaters. That kind of theme would bleed through to propaganda. Well, not propaganda. Well, yeah, it's propaganda made to sell and catch your eye. And Hot Topic is a relatively expensive shop. So I went in there and I look on the walls and I'm like, there's two things that are binding. One is extremely prevalent everywhere. It's anime. Anime is the thing that's, because it used to be like you're like a jock, or you're a punk, or you're a goth. And you were kind of like encapsulated by your music and then genre and that's what you were as you were up and coming. And so that's what I could relate to. That's what bound you together. You'd all listen to like the same music. And now it's anime. It's anime specifically, but what is anime but like stories? It's like a fantastical story where things are taken to the extreme, and you could say maybe they're extremely serious. I don't know. So it's like Trigun and Naruto. So that's the thing that's bonding at least the up-and-coming youth, from what I can see, because there's a lot of younger people in there. It's stories. But it isn't just stories about everything all at once. It's stories about particular people at particular times doing fantastic things, mythic things even. But they're worthy of watching, and they captivate people, and they are binding. They're bound in the unity of the direction of the hero. So a hero has, from what I understand, what it looks like is a hero is somebody who knows the rules, like all of them, follows them, and knows when to break them properly. Knows when to break them when the entire planet maybe doesn't want you to, like you're against the world. That's a hero. And there's perks and there's benefits of being a mythic hero, because a mythic hero, you don't know if they exist or not. There's a benefit of being a dead hero, because a dead hero you can't examine, you can't cross-examine. You probably heard the idea where, like, you either become the hero or live long enough to become the villain. That's like the downside of being alive and being a hero, is everybody's a sinner on this planet. Somebody with some sort of perception will find something wrong with you at some point, and boom, suddenly your entire perfect record is just tarnished. This example still holds true. If a man, say your boss, maybe not your boss, but it doesn't matter. If a man would save 100 orphans out of a burning building and then have an intercourse with a goat, what would you call him? Well, boom. I know that's an extreme example, kind of crude, but it makes the point, right? The negative element's what usually binds people together. It binds them in story, and the Bible is replete with this kind of stuff. We're going back to one of the binding elements of people itself. So we're talking about the youth with music specifically, and then with anime. Well, that was like the binding thing for our culture was the Bible, roughly speaking. That's what everyone read and everyone talked about, and gave you roughly a guideline how to live and what was important. That kind of thing gave you value. This country is kind of based on a moral society, doing the right thing because you should. Where does that come from? What is the right thing? Why should you do it, as opposed to doing whatever you feel like you should do? The hero also is if they're dead, they have luxury of being stagnant, so their myth can live on beyond them. That's one way of being immortal. But the sacrifice of the hero, like there's a real element of danger to it. Dritz Do'Urden, for example, his whole culture, he's from the Dark Elves, the Dark Elf area. If you're not familiar with Dritz Do'Urden, I'll try to lay it out for you. He's like in a world where immorality is rampant, chaos wins. Their god is literally the Dark Queen of Chaos, the spider god Lolth, Lloth, I think. He has morality built into him. So does his dad, but his dad gave up. His dad was like Lot in the Bible. He's so surrounded by so many people that are corrupt and playing the corruption game, do whatever it takes, sacrifice your means, that he became that. But he still had his soul inside him, but he was Lot, right? Lot was also the character who would give up his 2 virgin daughters in exchange for, as sort of to pacify the crowd. Like, that's a good thing, right? Well, that's what Lot did, and he was considered righteous. So Zaknaphian was Dritz's father, was also considered righteous, I guess. And Dritz finds his way out of the Underdark. He goes all the way up from the abyss, from the place where all the Dark Elves reside. And he's considered a hero because he is against all odds. He's the only one, somehow, makes it out of all the Dark Elves that have ever been born and blessed. And then you take that, and then there's R.A. Salvador. He wrote the Dritz series for the Forgotten Realms. And you can look up a video of him on camera actually tearing up when people say how good his books were and how they got other people through rough patches. That's an example of and that works. That really does. Like the element of hope even in myth is great. It's a great thing. So where does that hope come from? I guess it's better than the opposite, right? The cruel tragedy of reality that we can focus on with no hope of transcending that. I mean, that'd be kind of terrible. There's nothing to look up to. Where do you look? You start looking around and down. So the alternative of finding a hero, the alternative of hope, because a hero is just an embodiment of that hope. You can have a whole set of principles, but if they are not seen embodied in action, are they really anything besides just abstract thought? This is how the correlation like words or violence comes into play. Like abstract thought could turn into that, but does it? Like we have to look at the evidence, and the train of thought and the culture. Like these are complex issues, obviously. So, I mean, Dritz was one of my heroes for a while, for sure. Vash the Stampede from Trigun. He's probably my favorite character in anime ever. Vash the Stampede. The guy he lives outside of time, can dodge bullets, and doesn't kill anybody. But he lives in like a western post-apocalyptic. Well, it's not post-apocalyptic. They crash landed there. He lives in like a western planet where they all shoot each other. But all the heroes, at least the ones I can see, all the heroes that we've had in our past, the ones that stand out, it seems like they all kind of have a guiding principle, and that's aiming up, not necessarily toward human flourishing, because that could be what? Population, gratification, utilitarianism, that kind of thing. So it's not something you can really pinpoint, you know, buddy? But out of all the heroes that have ever existed, like, nothing comes close to Christ. Even Buddha sort of does, because he hit nirvana, then he felt compelled, because there's so many other people who have not hit enlightenment, I have to go back. Krishna, I don't know how to make sense yet. I actually have the Holy Vedas and the Gita. Hold on. I thought it was proper, because I'm reading Gandhi's autobiography. I got these. They're going to be read. Right after Maps of Meaning, I think I might hit... There's three volumes of the Gulag Archipelago. I'm going to read all three. One at a time, maybe. I'll pace them out. I also have the I Ching. The I Ching was the book Tetsuya Shimabuku read and studied when he was going to become a fortune teller, and then he became the founder of Ishinru Karate. I also have 2 books for the C.S. Lewis Institute back there I have to read. The End Time Prophecies and Love is the Ultimate Apologetic. I'm going to run out of time before I run out of books. There's a lot to read. So when aiming at your hero, it might be a great idea to, examine everything about them and see the good parts about them. There's the thing about Christ as opposed to even Buddha, who says, I am not the one to save you. You must save yourself. Is he came and shared in death to show there's something beyond that. So it's really tough for me not to point to Christ as being like the ultimate thing to aim at. Because even Christ was capable of violence, and for kicking the people out of the Gentile area around the Jewish synagogue. And you cannot be meek unless you're capable of action, capable of power. It's impossible. So Christ was meek. He was humble to a point, but meekness overrode that humility. The power was there. You cannot be a weak hero and go toe-to-toe with the religious authorities in public in front of people. It's impossible. So that guy made such a stand. Is just remarkable. And all the other heroes, all the myths, like Mithras and everything else of the past, with the virgin births and everything else, are just heralding that kind of thing. Because they're all in myth. The thing about Christ is, it actually did happen. That's pretty significant. Anyway, those are my thoughts on heroes. Let me know what you thought. What kind of heroes did you guys perhaps have? Leave a comment below, like and subscribe.